Hello YouTube divers, this is WaterIve122 and I want to welcome you all to another episode of Magic Metal Mondays. Today we are going to be reviewing yet another Sonata Arctica album. This is really what many fans consider to be their last classic album before everything started to go downhill, as many fans like to say. But we are going to be talking about their sixth studio album, The Days of Grays, released in 2009. So, we have a lineup change for this record. Their iconic guitar player, Jani Liimatainen, is out, and in is Elias Viljanen, who's in the band up until this very day. Right off the bat, I'll say that he sounds pretty good on this album. He's by no means as good as Jani Liimatainen, but gotta give him credit where credit is due. Elias Viljanen is a great guitar player in his own right, and he sounds excellent on this record. Then vocals, and then every other instrument is kept by the same people who've been on some of the previous records. You still have Tony Kakko on vocals, Marko Pasakolski on the bass, Henrik Klingenberg on the keyboards, and Tommy Portimo on drums. But there's also a guest vocalist on this record. On two of the tracks on this record, you have Johanna Korkela doing female vocals, and we'll discuss that in the record. So, I previously mentioned in my last video that at this point, a lot of songs on Sonata Arctica's albums were starting to get very overproduced, too in your face, too aggressive, for my personal liking. And the Days of Grace is no exception. There's definitely a lot of overproduced and boring songs in this record, but in my opinion, there's less of those songs here than they were on Unaya. Because this was something that I was kind of alluding to in the Unaya review. The Days of Grays tackles this sound and this style and this production quality a lot better compared to Unaya, because Unaya was such a jarring switch up for the band, but now that they have their feet wet, they played the album live, they have a sense of where they want to go from here. The Days of Grays was the follow-up experiment, and in my opinion, it was executed a lot better compared to Unaya. This one has always been one of my favorite Sonata Arctica albums, even back when I first listened to all 10 of their records at the time, now 11, thanks to Clear Cold Beyond. The Days of Grays has always been one of my favorite Sonata Arctica records. And on this latest re-listen, my opinion is pretty much the same. It's still a great album. It's still very, very well made. It's got some great songs, and we're gonna talk about them. So, yeah, let's dive into the tracks. So there are 12 tracks on here, technically 11, but I'll explain why in a minute. But there are 12 songs on this album, and we're going to talk about every one of them. So here we go. So the opening track is an instrumental. It's the instrumental. It's the just the music for Everything Fades to Gray, which in of its own self is a great number. We'll talk more about Everything Fades to Gray once we get to the end of the album, because the actual song is at the very end of the album. So, but as far as this instrumental is concerned, it's great. I love it. Great use of strings, great use of keyboards and pianos. It's a great song, great piece. Then we have a mini epic on this album, the 8-minute long Death Aura, which is kind of broken up into like a little, like around 20 to 30 second subparts. And this is one of the two tracks to feature Johanna Korkela on female vocals, and she absolutely kills it on here. This definitely is one of their more aggressive songs. And really, this whole album is filled with a lot of their more aggressive songs. But like I said earlier, they handle this style and this sound a lot better on here than they did on Unaya. So there's that, and Death Aura is, in my opinion, one of the greatest examples. This is one of my favorite tracks from the record. I love longer songs, if you couldn't already tell. Yeah, Death Aura is definitely one of their better long songs, I have to say. So, yeah. Then we get my favorite track on the record, and one of the two singles that were released from this album, The Last Amazing Grays. This is one of the most overplayed songs on the record, and if you remember from my top 10 Sonata Arctica songs rankings, this was the only song from this album that appeared on that list. And it's not because this album has a lot of duds. No, it's because I just liked other songs from other records better. But with The Last Amazing Grace, I love the more laid back, the more slower, mid tempo approach to the music here. And I love Tony Kakko's vocal performance on here. It's very nice, very smooth, very warm. And that's kind of a recurring theme that you would get from Mr. Kakko moving forward. But yeah, The Last Amazing Grace, fantastic song. One of my favorite tracks from the band in general. And then we got another very popular Sonata Arctica song, and the second single from this record, Flag in the Ground. This is probably the most overplayed track from this record, and for very good reason. It is a great power metal jam that definitely calls back to the Reckoning Night days. I get a lot of Reckoning Night vibes from this song with the Unaya production and vocal larynx and stuff like that. But yeah, this is a very anthemic, and the melody in the chorus in particular is just very, very catchy. It's an earworm. Yeah, I love Flag in the Ground. Another great track. And then you have the first ballad on this record, Breathing, which is just so freaking beautiful. Again, it has another very soft, warm, and round, just very well made vocal performance from Tony Kakko. Oh man, definitely one of his best vocal performances in this modern era of the band. But yeah, Breathing, great song. Then we get two okay tracks. We have Zeros and The Dead Skin, which are very much in that vein of Unaya. Both of them feel like they were leftovers from the Unaya album. They are both very overproduced. They both have way too much going on within the overall mix. Like, the vocal larynx are just so out of control, and a lot of them are very aggressive and harsh for my tasting, especially on The Dead Skin, which, I mean, I get it. It's supposed to be a darker song, but yeah, this is one of those rare instances across this record where I started to kind of tap out. And with The Dead Skin in particular, it being over 6 minutes, it's just, it's a track I could probably do without. Zeros is a little bit better, I'll give it that, but, yeah, these two tracks, I would be fine if they were mainly just bonus tracks or B-sides to one of the two singles or both of the singles. But, yeah, not really feeling Zeros or The Dead Skin, unfortunately. However, the same cannot be said for the next two songs on this record. You have Juliet, which continues the Caleb saga. I'm not going to list off all those songs. I did that in the previous two episodes, so there's that. But Juliet, a great addition to the story, and a great song in general. And then we have another one of my favorite tracks on the record, No Dream Can Heal a Broken Heart. Again, this one has always been one of my favorite tracks from this record, and this is the second song to feature female vocal contributions from Ms. Johanna Kirkella. And like on Death Aura, she delivers an amazing performance here. She and Tony Kakko really sound great together, in my opinion. Their vocal layerings just blend in so smoothly with each other, and I love it. I love it. And then we have another great track on this record, another ballad, As If the World Wasn't Ending. I say ballad, it's kind of an understatement, because this is the kind of ballad you would expect from a previous Sonata Arctica song, like, I don't know, I would probably have to say maybe like Shem and Delay from Reckoning Night, or The End of This Chapter from Silence, or Full Moon from Ecliptica. It's kind of in that vein. Except it's not really a power metal song. It's more of a it's more of a progressive. It's a late 2000s progressive alt metal type of song. But I think it's pretty good. I think As If the World Wasn't Ending is another one of those standout tracks on this record for sure. Then we get another average song, The Truth Is Out There. Honestly, I think this one might be above average. I think this is the best out of the 3 average tracks on this album. Um, my problem with this, I think it's just a little bit too long for what it needs to be. I feel like maybe like 30 to 45 seconds could have been trimmed off of here, and I don't think you would have lost anything. Because as a result, as it is, it just feels like very meandering, and it just doesn't really go anywhere for me. But yeah, The Truth Is Out There. Not really feeling this, but I will say it is the best out of the 3 quote-unquote weaker tracks on this record. And then we get the final song, Everything Fades to Gray. This version actually has the lyrics implied. And I mentioned earlier in the video that Everything Fades to Gray is a great song, and it is. I slightly prefer the version with lyrics. Yeah. And this is one of those tracks where I think the vocal layerings and the harsher production are executed beautifully here. Like, it gives me a lot of Winter Hearts Guild vibes in a way. It is overproduced, sure, but it's at least entertaining. I don't feel like tapping out when I listen to Everything Fades to Gray. Like tracks like Everything Fades to Gray and Flag in the Ground and No Dream Can Heal a Broken Heart, etc. Like all of these tracks are great examples of Sonata Arctica having songs that are overproduced, but are not a bore to get through, which was something that the Unaya album didn't really do very well, in my opinion, but the Winter Hearts Guild album did do well. So I think when it comes to the Days of Grace, I think it has the best moments. I think it's like a nice little blend of all the best moments from Sonata Arctica's previous 2 to 3 records, like mainly, like possibly dating back to Winter Hearts Guild. It does still have songs that feel overproduced, and some of them are boring, but a lot of them are entertaining, and a lot of them are captivating. And so as a result, I feel like The Days of Grace is a much stronger record than Unaya, and it still remains as one of my favorite Sonata Arctica albums in general. I would rate this a 9 out of 10. I think maybe just a little bit of filler is on this record, and, I still don't really get some of the songs with those harsher production sounds. It just kind of destroys the mood of the album for me, or at least of the songs, rather. But the one thing I can't say about The Days of Grace is that it at least executes them a lot better than Unaya did. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, 9 out of 10. Great album. Definitely one of my favorite albums from Sonata Arctica. And so yeah, with that said, I believe there's only one more album from their classic era to review, and that's their second album, Silence. I saved this one to the very end because, save the best for last. Spoiler alert. Yeah, so that concludes this edition of Magic Metal Mondays. Thank you so much for watching, my fellow YouTube divers. This is Water I 122 signing out, ready to dive into more fun on YouTube. Thanks for watching.